Ji Rumong. Xingyun, that assistant's hands are so dirty. How could you touch them? She gripped my wrist tightly. Click, a soft sound. It was the sound of the door locking from the inside. Ji Rushua stepped out from the shadows. A high heel pressed against my throat. Have you played enough? Our Xing'er has finally come home. As for me, cold sweat slid down into my collar. My mind went blank. Who exactly are they? Me, Li Xingyun, 26 years old. My major was prestigious, my resume bright. But reality was cruel, leaving me battered and bruised. The phone rang. A gentle female voice. A headhunter? I answered numbly, until she clearly enunciated the name of that top-tier enterprise. The G Group invites you for a preliminary discussion. The interview location is on the top floor of the G Group headquarters. Her words hit my heart like a heavy hammer. The G Group? That place. A nobody like me standing at the entrance would probably lower their average property value. It all felt so unreal, yet carried a fatal temptation. The next morning, I rummaged through boxes and cabinets to find the only suit presentable enough to be seen in. The elevator climbed silently, the numbers jumping rapidly, my heart beating so fast it felt like it would pop out of my throat. The top floor, the air seemed filtered, cold and clean, carrying an invisible oppression. The receptionist's smile was charming. The heavy doors slid open soundlessly. Then I saw them, the CEO sisters of a G Group. Anyone who has surfed the internet knows them. Two faces almost exactly alike. Cold white skin like oriental porcelain. Features so exquisite not a single flaw could be found. Tall figures. The only difference lay in their temperament. The one on the left, in a black suit, leaned back in a wide black leather chair. She looked up at me, her gaze sharp. Her eyes swept over my whole body, devoid of emotion, holding only assessment and scrutiny. She didn't speak, but that invisible weight made me subconsciously straighten my back. Ji Rushua. Her name immediately popped into my mind. I had seen her in photos online. One of the current helmsmen of the G clan. The one on the right had a completely different temperament. She sat on the single sofa opposite, wearing a soft beige knit set. Chestnut hair loosely pinned up, a warm smile on her face. Mr. Li Xingyun, please sit. Her voice was clear and sweet, instantly diluting the chill brought by Ji Rushua. Ji Rumong, the other heir, the image ambassador for the G Public Welfare Fund. I've heard a lot about you, Mr. Li Xingyun. Ji Rumong spoke first, motioning for me to sit in the chair opposite them. We have reviewed your resume and some project reports, and we greatly admire your talent. Her gaze was honest and appreciative, without condescension, even carrying a hint of friendliness. I try to maintain my composure. You flatter me, Director G. It is my honor to have this interview opportunity. Ji Rushua seemed to have zero interest in my pleasantries. Her fingertips lightly tapped the desktop. We have a position that requires keen market insight, rapid reaction capability, and extremely high loyalty. Her voice wasn't loud, but every word was ice cold. She looked straight into my eyes for the first time. Something flashed past in those bottomless pupils. It sent a strange chill down my spine. The requirements are high, the pressure is great, and those who remain are truly top-tier talents. Ji Rumong chimed in at the right moment, her tone gentle as if soothing me. Of course, the resources and platform the group can provide are absolutely top of the industry. She gently pushed a document over. This is the specific job description, as well as your compensation package structure. I opened the file, my eyes gliding over countless welfare clauses, finally freezing on the annual salary column. That long string of numbers made my breathing stop momentarily. The zeros following it were something the sum of my desperate overtime over the past few years couldn't even hope to match. I even saw a private apartment, exclusive vehicle, twice-yearly global top-team retreats. This wasn't a job. This was a sudden rise to heaven. Well, Ji Rushua's voice rang out, carrying a flavor that allowed no doubt. She leaned forward slightly. We need your answer, Li Xingyun. This compensation. My throat went tight. Huge surprise assaulted my nerves, almost drowning out my initial nervousness. But Ji Rushua's scrutinizing gaze remained, like thorns in my back. A vague suspicion crossed my mind. Why would they find me? With such generous conditions, people with backgrounds from top universities would be breaking down the doors to get in. Ji Ruming seemed to see through my hesitation. Her smile deepened a little. Her gaze fell even more intently on my face. Was there a hint of searching in that focus? Xingyun, may I call you that? She spoke softly. Your talent deserves such a reward. The Ji family never shortchanges those with true potential. Ji Ruxue did not object to how her sister addressed me. She just watched me quietly, her gaze terrifyingly deep. After a long moment, she slowly uttered, yes. Sign it, Li Xingyun. And then, you will belong here. Belong? The word made my heart skip a beat inexplicably. I pulled the fountain pen from my suit pocket, the nib hovering over the signature line. My hesitation seemed so fragile and powerless in the face of such immense temptation. My heart pounded like a drum as I finally put pen to paper. The ink seeped into the page, leaving my name behind. In that instant, I felt as if I heard a faint tremor from the depths of my soul. I had finally shed my status as a damn corporate drudge. Ji Ruming's smile bloomed like a flower, sweet and captivating. Ji Ruxue remained expressionless, though a trace of satisfaction flickered in the depths of her profound gaze. The 32nd floor of the Ji Group Tower, my private office. Outside the window was a height that looked down upon the masses. The interior exuded understated luxury. My first day felt like a dream. The intercom on my desk rang softly. Xingyun. It was Ji Ruming's voice, warm with a smile. Settling in well? Come by my office in a bit. I want to chat with you about some ideas for the departmental structure. Her office was on a higher floor, equally massive but decorated with softer, more feminine tones. The air was filled with the faint scent of rose aromatherapy. She sat behind a wide desk, her demeanor relaxed, less like a business meeting and more like a gathering of friends. How does it feel? She stood up to pour me a glass of warm water herself, her movements natural and casual, her eyes never leaving my face. Xingyun, relax. Although our standards are high, the atmosphere here is quite open. She was witty, her insights into the industry sharp and precise without being overbearing. She occasionally interjected with praise for a specific project on my resume, igniting my confidence just enough. The next afternoon, Ji Ruming's assistant knocked on my office door. Mr. Li, afternoon tea from Vice President Ji. On the tray was a cup of aromatic, freshly ground coffee and a sticky note. On it was a line of elegant handwriting. Hard work, keep it up, Meng. My heart warmed, mixed with a flutter of being overwhelmed by the favor. Ji Ruming seemed to always appear at the perfect moment, offering a snack or a caring glance. Her closeness was like hot spring water, comforting at first. But slowly, the heat began to spread, seeping into my skin bit by bit. She always knew when to back up my points, smiling faintly when our eyes met, as if we were the only kindred spirits in the room. A sense of dependency quietly took root. My interactions with Ji Ruxue, however, were starkly different. During a small meeting regarding the quarterly promotion plan, I projected my prepared presentation. I hadn't been speaking for 10 minutes when Ji Ruxue leaned back in her executive chair, fingers interlaced. Her gaze fixed on a massive screen, her thin lips pressed into a line. Stop! Her voice wasn't loud, yet it interrupted me with the cold precision of cutting metal. Where is the market data support? The user emotional value? What about the consumer psychological analysis? This is the strategy you stayed up all night to create. The conference room fell dead silent. She stood up and walked to the screen, her slender fingers swiping casually to point at a specific section. The logical chain here is completely broken. It lacks data support. It is entirely subjective speculation. She turned to look at me, her eyes sharp and devoid of any amusement. Li Xingyun, the Ji Group doesn't hire people to be deadweight. Every word made my face burn. Her demands were suffocatingly strict. Every detail had to be scrutinized and polished repeatedly. It was as if a single flaw would lead to eternal damnation. I bit the bullet and revised it according to her requirements, working until 3 a.m. before finally earning a reluctant nod from her. The next morning, however, I found a warm latte and a familiar sticky note on my desk. It bore Ji Ruming's soft handwriting again, You worked hard. My sister has high standards, but she genuinely wants the best for you. Remember to eat breakfast. I held the latte, gazing at the scenery outside. Dependency and fear, like two invisible vines, quietly wrapped themselves around my heart. The feeling of suffocation hit me distinctly for the first time during a dinner spontaneously organized by the department to celebrate the completion of a small project. The atmosphere was relaxed, and everyone was having a few drinks. Xiaolin, a new intern in the marketing department and a young girl full of energy, approached me. She held a glass of white liquor, walking over confidently to offer a toast. Manager Lee, this project only moved forward thanks to your leadership. I'm really grateful. Let me toast you. I had just raised my glass, a smile still lingering on my face. Xingyun has a sensitive stomach. The doctor only recently told him to quit drinking to let it heal. A clear, sweet voice rang out from behind me, laced with just the right amount of concern and a trace of unquestionable familiarity. Ji Ruming's arm slipped through the crook of mine with extreme naturalness, holding on lightly. Her body pressed slightly against me, bringing with it a waft of faint, elegant fragrance. With her other hand, she elegantly lifted my wine glass, looking at little Lin with a gentle smile. I'll drink this one for him. The air around us instantly solidified. The smile on little Lin's face froze, his eyes filled with confusion and embarrassment. Colleagues exchanged glances, the relaxed expressions on their faces vanishing instantly. The atmosphere turned incredibly bizarre. Everyone fell silent, as if even their breathing had grown lighter. Little Lin nodded in a panic, mumbling, it's fine, VPG, please don't mention it." He returned to his seat as if fleeing for his life. Ji Ruming tilted her head back as if nothing had happened and drained the glass of wine meant for me in a single gulp. The movement of her throat as she swallowed was elegant and clean. Her arm remained linked with mine. The warmth radiating through my thin shirt chilled me from my fingertips to the soles of my feet. For the rest of the evening, not a single woman dared to come over and say another word to me. Several days later, at dusk, when I got off work, I found a scrawny stray cat in the corner of a flower bed downstairs. It was a very ordinary orange tabby with messy fur, staring warily at passers-by. I subconsciously stopped. I happened to have half a pack of unfinished bread slices from the morning in my pocket. Seeing its timid appearance, my heart inexplicably softened. Just as I was about to bend down to see if I could give a little food, Xingyun, that familiar voice rang out again, close at hand. I straightened up abruptly. Ji Ruming was standing by my side before I knew it. Her high heels hadn't made sound. She was wearing a soft cashmere cardigan, her smile as warm and gentle as a spring breeze. Her gaze swept casually over the frightened stray cat, and her smile seemed to deepen slightly. "Oh, what a skinny little kitten. You really are kind-hearted, Xingyun." Her tone was soft, like she was praising a child. However, her tone shifted. Her voice was still sweet, but it carried a certain implication. "People at the hospital say these stray animals carry a lot of germs, fleas, and eggs. They might even have potential infectious diseases. It's too dirty. Better to stay away, okay?" Her arm naturally linked with mine again, her grip gentle but allowing no escape. "Let's go. That new Huayang restaurant you mentioned wanted to try last time. I finally managed to book a table. We could go taste it today." Her tone was cheerful, full of anticipation for dinner. I didn't look at the stray cat again. With my arm linked in hers, I felt the irresistible guiding force she transmitted. Her arm was warm, her fingertips resting lightly on the thin skin inside my elbow. The smile remained on her face, bright and moving. She held on tight. It was a warning, delivered with extreme gentleness. The air drifted with an invisible, yet incredibly real scent of iron rust. Wisps of it seeped into my nasal cavity, reaching straight to the depths of my heart. This seed of fear, in the fertile soil named gentleness, greedily sucked up nutrients named restriction, and quietly broke through the earth. After the arm-linking incident at that dinner party, little Lin took leave the very next day, and the atmosphere in the department became cautious. Colleagues spoke to me with a kind of hesitant politeness. I knew there was a warning sign named Ji Ruming, hanging over my head. Late at night, the office contained only the cold, ghostly light of the computer screen and my exhausted figure. The quarterly report was imminent, and G. Rushue's requirements were nearly draconian. Every PPT slide, every set of data, every logical deduction had to be impeccable. It was already 1:00 a.m. My neck was terribly stiff, and my temples were throbbing. The door was pushed open gently, making a faint sound. I thought it was the security guard on routine patrol, so I didn't lift my head. Still working so hard? Ji Ruming's voice carried a softness unique to the night, brushing past my ear like a feather, approaching without warning. I was so startled my hand shook, clicking the mouse in the wrong place. I looked up. She was standing right by the desk. Not in the elegant suit from the daytime, but in a mist blue silk lounging robe. Her jet black hair was draped loosely, her face free of makeup. In the dim light, she appeared with a near illusory purity. She held a cup in her hand, steam rising from it in curling wisps. VPG, you haven't rested yet this late? I subconsciously pulled away a little. She didn't answer my question. She simply placed the steaming cup on my desk and pushed it toward my hand. It wasn't coffee. The air filled with a warm aroma of milk. It's warm milk with a little honey. She leaned forward slightly, almost touching the back of my chair, her gaze falling on the complex charts on my screen. Just looking at this gives me a headache. How can you keep staying up like this? What if you ruin your health? Her concern felt too natural, and she was so close it made me uncomfortable. My body stiffened involuntarily. Thanks. It's mainly that this consolidated report still has a few key verification points. Let me handle it, she said suddenly, her voice light, but carrying a strange sort of conviction. Her pale fingers reached for my mouse. No need. Vice President G. How could I trouble you with this? I'm almost done. I reached out to block her almost reflexively, but my fingertips accidentally grazed the skin of her slightly cool hand. She froze instantly, and I immediately pulled my hand back. The atmosphere solidified for a split second. She didn't touch the mouse. Instead, she lifted her hand. Her fingertips landed without warning above my right temple, on an old scar that had long faded and was barely visible. It was a spot I rarely noticed myself. The pads of her fingers stroked the slightly raised old scar gently back and forth. Her movements carried a sleepwalking-like trance. Her gaze was no longer on the screen. Instead, it pierced through me, landing on some extremely distant point in time and space. The office was quiet enough to hear a heartbeat. The faint sound of her warm fingertips touching my skin was audible. Here, she murmured, her voice holding a pained sadness. Does it still hurt? Before, didn't this bleed a lot? Bugs crawled over it. So dark, so cold. Her fingertips trembled slightly, her eyes hollow and dazed. But, Xingyun, her voice stopped abruptly. My heart almost stopped in that instant. Blood rushed madly to the top of my head, then froze into ice the next second. That scar. Bugs? The two little girls in the orphanage, beaten and curled up in a dark corner, their faces covered in blood. Memory fragments sealed for 20 years were forcibly torn open. I saw myself back then, watching those two little girls being mobbed at the orphanage. The roar I let out as I waved my equally tender fists, trying my absolute hardest. Those two frail figures shivering behind me, protected. One face? No, it was two identical small faces covered in tears and fear. No, impossible. That was so long ago. The woman in front of me was the G family heiress. She couldn't be that dirty girl from the orphanage. But an immense sense of shock and absurdity made my whole body stiff. My throat felt blocked. I couldn't spit out a single word. I looked at this breathtakingly beautiful face before me, a face revealing an eerie familiarity, and my mind went blank. Just then, Ji Ruming seemed to be suddenly awakened by my stiffness. The mist in her eyes dissipated instantly, refocusing on my face. The intense sorrow and reminiscence from a moment ago vanished without a trace. Replacing it was a hint of panic and the annoyance of having one's privacy pried into. She abruptly withdrew her hand, curling her fingertips into her palm. Huh. She gave a short laugh and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear somewhat deliberately. Her face quickly piled on her usual gentle smile, perfectly burying the anomaly revealed in that instant. I must be days from staying up late, talking nonsense. Don't mind me, Xingyun. She picked up the warm milk again and pushed it forward. Drink it quickly and get some rest. Work is never ending. Her voice returned to being sweet with no flaws. She turned around, her silk robe tracing a smooth arc in the quiet night. Reaching the door, she stopped without looking back, only saying softly, "Go home early. Don't be late for the project meeting tomorrow." The door clicked shut gently. Only I and that cup of gradually cooling milk remained in the office. I collapsed into the chair, cold sweat soaking my back. I told myself over and over again, this is absolutely impossible. A few days later, a representative from an important partner in City A visited the company, and I was in charge of the reception. The person was Ms. Suya, shrewd and capable, in her early 40s, with very professional speech and demeanor. We mainly discussed a market research project requiring deep cooperation between both sides. The meeting lasted 2 hours, and communication was smooth. At the end, out of courtesy, I extended my hand. "Thank you, General Manager Su, for your time and suggestions today. Our team will submit the detailed plan to your company as soon as possible." Suya also smiled and extended her hand, shaking mine. "Manager Lee, you're too polite. It's a pleasure working with you." After seeing off Suya's team, I had just returned to my office, preparing to organize the records from the meeting. Before I could even warm the seat, the office door made a violent, loud noise. Bang! Ji Ruming charged in like an out-of-control shadow, bringing a cold gust of wind with her, and slammed the door shut behind her with a vicious swing. The deafening bang made my heart lurch violently. Her face was drained of blood. All her former gentleness and serenity had vanished without a trace. In those large eyes that were once filled with mirth, now only cold, fanatical flames burned furiously. "Li, Xing, Yun," she screamed it out with all her might, her voice twisted and distorted. Like the wail of a wounded beast, it instantly tore through the silence of the office. Before I could react, she threw herself at me. She wasn't trying to hit me, nor was she scolding me. She hugged me from behind, locking me in a death grip with all her strength. Her arms constricted my chest, and arms like iron bands, possessing shocking power. Her petite body was pressed tightly against my back, trembling violently and uncontrollably. She rubbed her cheek hard against my back, her scorching heat burning my skin through my thin shirt. "Why? Why did you let her touch your hand?" Her voice was no longer a scream, but had turned into a whisper that sounded like she was weeping blood. Every word hammered viciously into my eardrums and heart. "Why? Did you look into her eyes? Why did you smile at someone else? You are mine. You can only be my brother. Since so long ago, you should have only been looking at me." She shrieked like a madwoman, her body heaving with intense emotion, and scalding tears instantly soaked the fabric on my back. I was nearly suffocated by her sudden outburst and that terrifying embrace. My hands and feet went cold, and my blood felt as if it had congealed. "Calm down. Let go of me. I don't understand what you're saying." I struggled hard, trying to pry open her hands clamped across my chest. Those slender fingers erupted with unimaginable power. Let go of you." She jerked her head up violently, her tear-drenched cheek only centimeters from my neck. Scalding tears and burning breath sprayed onto my skin, her gaze manic and chaotic. "You want to push me away? Like you almost pushed us away back then? No, never. Don't you dare. Don't you even think about it." Her fingernails were digging deep into the flesh of my arms. My mind was a complete blank. I had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. Just then, the office door was pushed open silently again. There was not a sound of footsteps. Ji Rushua stood in the doorway. Her expression was icy, devoid of any emotional fluctuation, terrifyingly calm. Her gaze didn't look at me, but locked onto the near-hysterical Ji Rumong behind my back. "Rumong," she spoke, her voice not loud, but steady and clear, carrying a piercing, bone-chilling coldness that instantly suppressed her sister's frantic crying and panting. Have you lost your mind? Ji Rumung froze instantly, her body still pressed tightly against me, her grip on my arms not loosening in the slightest. She turned her head stiffly toward the door, meeting Ji Rushue's deep, pool-like eyes that held no warmth. The fanatical flames in her eyes were extinguished in an instant, leaving only the void of fear and helpless grievance. She sobbed, her shoulders heaving violently. Sis. He. Ji Rushue's gaze shifted from Ji Rumung and finally landed on my face. That look, profound, indifferent, carrying the absolute control of one scrutinizing a possession. She walked over slowly, her high heels making no sound on the soft carpet. She stopped beside me, the overwhelming oppressive aura nearly causing me to stop breathing. She didn't hug me like her sister, nor did she scold me. She simply reached out her cold fingers and rested them on my shoulder. She didn't press down hard, just let them rest there. But that icy touch and the latent power in her fingertips felt like an invisible steel lock, instantly jamming any possibility of my struggling. My shoulder went stiff and cold under that icy touch. Her gaze lingered on my terrified face for a second, then turned back to the still sobbing Ji Rumung. Her tone was low, leaving no room for argument. Stop crying. You're scaring him. Then, her gaze fell back into my eyes, a look that seemed to be delivering a final verdict, coldly emphasizing an established fact. He is here, he won't leave, and there is nowhere he can go. The air froze. The room was left with only the sound of Ji Rumung's suppressed, intermittent sobbing, and the sound of my heart, seemingly about to explode, pounding against my chest. Ji Rushue's fingers still rested on my shoulder, at the exact spot where she could feel my pulse racing uncontrollably from extreme fear. Their words, and Ji Rumung's insane behavior, like a heavy brand, searing ruthlessly and mercilessly onto my heart. Won't leave? Can't leave? Who exactly are they? What on earth do they mean? Are they trying to build a cage for me? And am I to be their prisoner? The outburst in the office that day was like a switch for a nightmare. Ji Rumung disappeared for a few days. When she reappeared, she had reverted to that gentle and pleasant demeanor, as if the hysteria of that day had merely been my hallucination. She continued to send over exquisite afternoon tea and occasionally express concern about my workload. The smile on her face was impeccable, like a perfect mask. However, the invisible scent of rust in the air was so thick it was suffocating. She would even, in public settings, while I was exchanging necessary work-related words with any member of the opposite sex, extremely naturally link her arm through mine to assert her sovereignty. Colleagues would knowingly lower their heads. Xingyun. She was once again sitting on the sofa opposite me, holding a cup of aromatic black tea, her voice soft. I read the contract revisions from last night. The logic is very clear. It seems you and Xiao Zhang from the legal department coordinated quite well. Her gaze seemingly unintentionally fell upon me. Vice President Ji. It was Xiao Zhang who was very professional and pointed out several key risks. I dare not take the credit, I answered cautiously. Don't be so distant. Just call me Rumung. She tilted her head slightly, her smile unchanged, but her gaze grew a little deeper. Xiao Zhang is indeed quite responsible. However, she set down her teacup and leaned forward, her tone tinged with just the right amount of concern. I heard she just broke up with her boyfriend. Will the work rhythm of someone going through emotional turbulence be affected? I'm quite worried her state might drag down the progress on your end. What do you think? I was stumped for words. How would Rumung know about Xiao Zhang's private breakup? And what connection did that have with her professional ability? There shouldn't be any problem, right? I try to refute her. Her professionalism is very strong. Strong professionalism does not equate to mental stability. Ji Rumung gently interrupted me, the worry in her eyes turning into unquestionable care. Xingyun, you always view human nature too simply. When people are in emotional low, their judgment becomes compromised. We need to mitigate risks. Tell you what, I'll have Assistant Wang take over the legal coordination with you from here on. I'll arrange other work for Xiao Zhang. We must ensure your project remains undisturbed. Her words were watertight. Using the excuse of protecting the project, she effortlessly severed my connection with an important collaborator. Similar incidents began to happen frequently. During a project planning meeting, I proposed a relatively novel but slightly risky offshoot idea regarding a regional promotion plan. Justification. Ji Rushua leaned back in her chair, hands clasped on the table, her eyes sharp as a blade. It is mainly based on localized consumer psychology research. We believe. Localized consumer psychology? Ji Rushua interrupted me with a sneer, her chin raised slightly, scrutinizing me with condescension. This report is from the third quarter of last year, isn't it? What about its timeliness? What about the representative nature of the sample? Are you sure you aren't being guided by your personal preferences and intuition? Her gaze carried an intense oppressiveness. She emphasized the words intuition and personal preferences heavily, as if they were a dangerous virus. Li Xingyun, at G Corporation, data and rational analysis are the sole basis for decisions. Put away those useless thoughts and execute according to the final confirmed framework. My novelty was instantly dismissed as useless. A deep sense of powerlessness seized me. One day after work, she gave me a lift back to my apartment. The car was filled with an expensive, woody fragrance. She asked casually, "Xingyun, I heard from my sister that you live in the Chengdong Sunshine community for a while in the past. The security there isn't very good. Did you move away later because you were afraid it was unsafe?" Chengdong Sunshine community? I frowned slightly. My memory was a bit chaotic. After graduating from university, I had rented a place with 2 roommates for a while, but wasn't it the Morning Sun Garden in the west of the city? I think it was Morning Sun Garden. I can't remember clearly. The security was fine. I mainly moved because it was far from the company. Morning Sun Garden? Ji Rumeng turned her head in surprise, a confused light flickering in her beautiful eyes. That's not right. I remember it clearly. You mentioned at the annual meeting last year that it was in the east of the city. At the time, you even said the steam buns made by the convenience store owner at the community gate were delicious. Her tone was absolutely certain, carrying a hint of playful dissatisfaction. Have you been staying up late too much recently and scrambled your memory? It won't do to not remember your own affairs clearly. Xingyun, I was swayed by her certainty. Did I really remember it wrong? Did I say that at the annual meeting? Did a trace of a vague impression of that bun's taste actually exist? My memory felt like it was covered by a layer of viscous fog, starting to shift and dislocate. They could always precisely seize upon the fragments of my memory. Reality was being rewritten or denied in a tone of concern. The dependency was escalating too. My apartment mailbox no longer belonged to me. All letters and packages were organized by assistants before being handed over. They would considerately help me replace my outdated computer, the uncomfortable office chair, the unsuitable rental location. I was moved into a brand new luxury apartment only a 10-minute drive from the G Corporation headquarters, boasting extremely tight security and an excellent view. In Ji Rumeng's words, it was to make my work convenient, and my quality of life needed improvement too. Refusal was futile. Occasionally, facing the mirror late at night, I would be frightened by the person inside whose eyes were gradually losing their luster, whose brows were gathered with a gloom that wouldn't disperse, and whose smile looked exhausted and strange. The Li Xingyun who once had bright eyes, a bit of stubbornness, and drive was being gently and slowly swallowed by a sweet, invisible quicksand. The feeling of suffocation finally accumulated to the breaking point. That night, Ji Rumeng appeared in my new apartment again. The reason this time was that she felt the sofa color didn't quite match my curtains. She was enthusiastically showing me several sky-high priced new items she had selected on her tablet. This gray-blue one isn't bad. It's quiet and soothing, suitable for your rest. Her slender fingers swiped across the screen, her smile perfect. But my gaze traveled over her shoulder, landing on the old suitcase in the corner of the living room that had gathered a thin layer of dust. A voice screamed in my mind, "Run. You must run. Let's go with this one." Ji Rumeng's voice became distant. I suddenly snapped back to reality. Oh, it's fine. My voice was dry, my heart beat like a drum, and my palms were covered in cold sweat. Vice President Ji Rumeng, I suddenly remembered there are a few urgent emails in the department I haven't finished processing, very important data reports. I have to go back to the company immediately. I'm sorry. I stood up almost stiffly. Now, The perfect smile on Ji Ruming's face froze for an instant, immediately replaced by deeper concern. It's so late? No matter how busy work is, your health is important. The emails can be handled by the assistant tomorrow. Her gaze swept over my obviously off-kilter expression. No, it's very urgent. I raised my volume, carrying a panic and determination that bordered on losing control. I grabbed the jacket draped over the chair back, not even daring to look into her eyes, and practically stumbled as I rushed toward the door. I'll be back very soon. The door slammed shut behind me with a bang. The cold air in the corridor poured into my lungs, carrying a faint trace of freedom. I rushed into the elevator, frantically pressing the first floor button. My heart battered crazily within my chest, as if trying to burst through my ribs. The sound of the car starting was like a horn of freedom. I slammed on the gas, rushed out of the underground garage, and merged into the river of headlights that still flowed endlessly through the city at midnight. Where to? The airport? No. The train station? Yes. Just buy any train ticket that leaves this city the fastest. My trembling fingers dialed the number of my college best friend. It rang for a long time before he picked up, his voice thick with sleepiness and impatience. Hello? Who is it? Aze. It's me, Li Xingyun. My voice was shaking. Help me. I urgently need Li Xingyun. The voice on the other end instantly sobered up. It was filled with horror and detachment. What are you doing calling in the middle of the night? Aren't you that G Corporation's chief? Aze, don't say all that. Listen to me. I'm being controlled. I'm on a run right now. I need a place. Xingyun. Aja's voice rose sharply, carrying a decisive tone of severance. Calm down. Stop talking nonsense. Last time, that director named Rumung from the G Foundation called us personally. She said you're under a lot of pressure right now. Your mental state is a bit unstable, and you need to rest and adjust properly. She told us not to disturb you for the time being. She said you're undergoing professional psychological treatment. I'm just an ordinary person. I don't understand any of that stuff with you guys. You go find Director G and her people. They definitely have a way. Don't come looking for me again. I can't help you. The busy signal sounded, crisp and decisive, snapping the last rope of hope. Yiruming. Psychological support. Mentally unstable. A chill instantly shot from the soles of my feet through my whole body. They had blocked off even this path. Like a headless fly, I drove toward the long-distance bus station on the edge of the city. The area outside the station was dilapidated and chaotic, a zone I had never set foot in before. Sir, are you going to the nearest city? Are you leaving right now? I leaned against the car window and asked anxiously of a driver who was dangling a cigarette from his mouth. The driver gave me a sidelong glance, his gaze drifting behind me. A trace of imperceptible wariness flitted through his cloudy eyes. He took a slow drag on a cigarette and mumbled, "Full. No seats left. Standing room is fine. No, I'll get points docked for overloading. Scram, get away." He waved his hand violently, as if shooing away a fly, his gaze averting mine. Just as he waved, the dim beam of the headlights swept across a jet-black Cullinan parked at the street corner. The license plate was familiar. It was Ji Ruming's personal ride. The massive chassis sat amidst the chaotic backdrop, like a lurking behemoth, silent and cold. The blood in my veins turned to ice in an instant. They had been following me all along. The entire world was silently rejecting me, shoving me toward the web they had already spread open. I bolted toward a dark corner of a dilapidated plaza, looking like a man who had lost his soul. I was exhausted. My lungs burned like fire, and my throat tasted of rusty blood. My phone had long since died. Around me, there was nothing but the flickering of dilapidated neon signs and the occasional bark of stray dogs. Despair submerged me like freezing seawater. Suddenly, two blindingly white beams of light cut through the darkness without warning, pinpointing me with terrifying precision. Like the final spotlight in a stage play, they nailed me, a dying prisoner, to the spot. The black Cullinan glided over silently, coming to a halt just 3 steps away from me, its engine purring with a low rumble. The rear right door opened. A slender foot, encased in a knee-high cashmere boot, touched the ground, stepping onto the filthy, freezing pavement, a stark and eerie contrast. Ji Rumung held a massive black umbrella, her posture composed and elegant. There was not a trace of anger on her face, only a profound heartache, as if she had finally found a lost child. She didn't walk toward the car. Instead, she walked straight up to me. The drizzle fell silently onto the canopy of her umbrella, creating a soft, rustling sound. On the edge of the freezing city, beneath the luxurious headlights, her exquisitely flawless face was breathtakingly beautiful in the dim light, possessing an almost inhuman purity. Her gaze pierced through my disheveled exterior, landing deep within my soul. Her voice, like honey steeped in all the tenderness of the world, flowed slowly from her lips. Chingyun Gij, this long-lost nickname, in this moment, struck me like lightning, sending a chill through my entire body. Have you had enough fun? The corners of her mouth curled into an arc of ultimate gentleness, as if she were coaxing a misbehaving child. Then she reached out. Her pale, slender fingers were cold as they steadily, irresistibly clamped onto my freezing, stiff wrist. My consciousness began to sink into darkness. I don't know how much time passed before my senses struggled to piece together the fractured reality. A soft sensation, as if sinking into clouds. I struggled to open my eyelids. What met my eyes was a suspended ceiling with embedded light strips emitting a soft glow. A refined, calming woody fragrance lingered in my nose. There was not a single sound, absolute silence. I bolted upright. A wave of dizziness hit me. Beneath me was a mattress filled with top-tier goose down. The touch was so luxurious, it felt unreal. The room was spacious, the decor minimalist yet teeming with high design. Every piece of furniture exuded an air of expense. A massive floor-to-ceiling window occupied almost an entire wall, but outside was not the sky, but a carefully manicured landscape wall planted with tall, evergreen foliage. My gaze swept across the walls, finding no obvious outline of doors or windows. A massive panic gripped my heart once again. I stumbled out of bed and rushed toward the only wall. It felt cold and hard to the touch, made of some special composite material, smooth without a single seam. That massive green landscape wall was merely a camouflage. This was a canary cage built of money, without a single way out. Chingyun Gij, you're awake? A cheerful, sweet voice rang out in the room without warning, like a phantom. I whipped my head around in terror. On the other side of the room, a concealed door that looked just like the wall slid open silently. Ji Rumung walked in holding a wooden tray, upon which sat a glass of steaming milk. She was wearing soft, beige loungewear, her long hair loosely pinned up. Her face radiated a pure joy, free of any shadow, as if we were simply enjoying a cozy weekend morning. Hungry? You slept for such a long time. She placed the tray on the white cloud-patterned marble side table and sat naturally on the soft wool carpet. She rested her chin in her hands, looking at me with eyes like twinkling stars. Do you feel any better? The air seemed to freeze. Fear and a sense of absurdity filled my chest, rendering me speechless. I could only stare at her intently. Don't be mad. She seemed amused by my expression and laughed softly, with the innocent charm of a little girl. You must be tired after running so hard. It's very quiet and safe here. No one can disturb you. As she spoke, she picked up the glass of milk, stirred it gently with a spoon, and blew away the steam on the surface. Here, drink some milk first to warm your stomach. Her eyes held nothing but pure attachment and longing, as if she were waiting to be fed. But what I saw was the abyss. That pure white, warm liquid now looked like the most terrifying poison on earth. Get out. My voice was hoarse, cracking from thirst. I won't drink it. Open the door. Ji Rumung paused in her stirring of the milk. The smile remained on her face, but the light in her crystal-clear eyes instantly congealed, ultimately dissolving into a hollow void that made my heart palpitate. The corners of her mouth were still curled upward, but the smile had turned cold and eerie. Chingyun Gij, she dragged out the sound. That vacant gaze locked straight onto me, like a black hole devouring light. A massive shadow grew wildly in the depths of her pupils. She asked softly, every word hammering against my frozen heart. Do you hate me now? She leaned forward slightly. Although she was sitting on the floor looking up at me, she exuded a suffocating sense of oppression. The air turned viscous and cold, making it almost impossible to breathe, just as the blood in my entire body was freezing under her gaze. Another figure appeared silently in the doorway. It was Ji Rushua. Her hands are casually tucked in her trouser pockets. She didn't approach, simply leaning against the doorframe, her cold eyes taking in every trace of resistance and fear on my face. Her gaze held none of Ji Ruming's emotional tempest, only coldness and indifference. She didn't speak, but that silent scrutiny was more despair-inducing than any reprimand. It was as if she were saying, "Know your place." Immense fear instantly crushed the last spark of resistance that had just ignited. My body felt as though its bones had been removed, and I slumped down against the edge of the bed. The glass of milk was right before my eyes, radiating a seductive sense of safety. I heard my own voice, hoarse and lowering in resignation. I avoided Ji Ruming's eyes, which were regaining their luster, but looked even more resentful. With a trembling hand, I reached out and took the milk. The warm liquid slid down my esophagus. It was sweet, but deep in my throat, it left behind only a nauseating, raw stench. The milk was sweet, and the pastries were exquisite. Like a machine with a preset program, I swallowed numbly, unable to taste a thing. My stomach was stuffed full, but my heart felt hollow, as if it had been completely gouged out. Ji Ruming became happy again, nestling against the carpet at my feet and humming a very familiar tune with a bizarre, nursery rhyme melody. The melody drilled into my eardrums like tiny shards of ice, stabbing my nerve endings one by one and dredging up the deepest, haziest fears. Her face was overflowing with immense satisfaction, as if this were the most perfect, blissful moment of her life. Ji Rushua turned and left. The door slid shut soundlessly. Time lost all meaning in this exquisite cage. Day or night could only be vaguely determined by the artificial shifts in natural light deliberately created outside the window. Ji Ruming came almost every day, sometimes rambling on about the future for the three of us she had envisioned. Sometimes she would just quietly nestle beside me, reading boring fashion magazines. Her gaze felt like a tangible rope binding me at all times. Ji Rushua visited less often. Each visit was a routine inspection to check my condition. Her cold eyes would scan me once, and after confirming everything was in order, she would leave, leaving behind an even heavier sense of suffocation. They no longer used the address Gidge, but that taboo word lay between us like a red-hot branding iron. The turning point came late one stormy night. Lightning flashed and thunder rolled outside, the immense sound penetrating the room's high-quality soundproofing. Startled awake by a massive clap of thunder, I sat up in bed, gasping for breath. There seemed to be strange noises coming from the corridor outside, faint human voices. Ji Rushua's voice, although distorted by the storm, her cold tone was highly recognizable. Was she on the phone with someone? Her voice was more urgent and husky than usual, even, laced with a trace of emotional fluctuation rarely seen in her. "Don't be noisy. Quiet." She was covering my ears? No, not covering them. She was slapping them hard. Her suppressed voice drifted in intermittently. Those dreams again. The small dark room. Bugs crawling in. So many hands, like the ravings of someone trapped in a nightmare, filled with chaotic agony. Those words hit me like an electric shock. The small dark room? Yes, the small dark room at the orphanage. The small dark room that had once imprisoned the two sisters. The small dark room where I had smashed the door down to rescue them. My heart began to pound furiously. A bold and crazy notion instantly welled up. The door had an electronic lock control from the outside, but could the control terminal be on Ji Rushua? Or perhaps somewhere within the suite? She was obviously in an emotionally unstable state right now. This was my chance. The thunder continued to roar. Barefoot, I padded softly across the plush carpet, gliding like a shadow to the door, pressing my ear tightly against the cold wood panel. Ji Rushue's muffled gasps and fragmented words continued, seemingly receding further and further away. Footsteps in the corridor moved away from the master bedroom of the suite, eventually disappearing in the direction of the staircase. My chance. She's gone. There were no surveillance cameras in the room. The only monitoring came from the electronic lock on the door and the butler system that could appear outside at any moment. Now she's gone. I lunged towards the headboard, frantically searching. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Spotlessly clean. I then rushed to the massive walk-in closet. The luxurious custom-built closet was filled with brand new, expensive clothes, pristine and spotless, without even a single storage box. Just as despair began to well up, my gaze was suddenly drawn to an extremely discreet, narrow door deep within the closet. What was behind it? A storage room? Holding my breath, I fumbled for a tiny indentation on the side of the door and pressed it firmly. The door slid open silently, creating a narrow gap. The space inside was small, containing only a combination safe embedded in the wall. My heart leaped into my throat. My instinct screamed wildly. This was it. There was something inside. But the password? I tried Ji Ruming's birthday, Ji Rushue's birthday, the company's founding anniversary, even the old Orphanage Street number. All wrong. The safe emitted a low, warning hum. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead in my agitation. Last chance. Those two blurry little faces stained with tears and blood flashed in the depths of my mind, accompanied by that faint cry, "Gidge, save me." A flash of lightning tore through the sky outside the window again. It illuminated the wall beyond the door crack, and also the almost desperate gamble in my eyes at that moment. My trembling fingers typed in the number I had forgotten in a corner of my heart. 0520. It was my birthday. Click. The faint click of the lock like music to my ears. The safe door sprang open. Inside, there were no documents, no jewelry. Only an ordinary old photo album. Its edges slightly yellowed, looking handmade. With hands trembling almost beyond feeling, I pulled it out. The album was light, yet it weighed a ton. I tore it open. First page. A blurry old photo of an orphanage group activity. Dozens of children, dressed in ill-fitting, faded orphanage uniforms, grinned foolishly or looked bewildered at the camera. My gaze frantically scanned the second row. Not there? No. Second page. Empty. Third page. Empty. My heart sank to the bottom. It's empty? No. Keep flipping. The pages were almost at an end. Just as I was about to give up, a severely faded and curled photograph, not glued in, but simply tucked between the last two pages, suddenly slipped out. The photo fluttered onto the carpet. I bent down to pick it up, and the moment my eyes met it, it was as if an invisible sledgehammer had violently struck my chest. My mind went blank. My breath hitched. The background of the photo was dark and blurry, clearly taken from candid angle. Centered in the frame was a stubborn boy with messy hair, wearing worn, ill-fitting clothes. He was squatting on the ground, his back to the camera. He looked to be just over 10 years old, with a slender build but a taut back, exuding a fierce resolve. What was he doing? His arms were wrapped around something, his body leaning slightly forward, forming a protective posture. Crouched in his arms were two tiny figures, even more shabbily dressed in clothes several sizes too small, almost overlapping, equally small and frail, equally terrified and helpless. Two tender faces pressed tightly against the boy's chest, clearly covered in tear streaks, dirt, and a fresh wound, gushing vivid blood, running across the right little girl's forehead just above her temple. The boy's profile was smudged with dirt, and there were several scrapes on his arms. His lips were pressed together, his gaze fiercely watchful towards a direction beyond the frame. That tender yet incredibly resolute posture, desperately protecting the treasures in his arms, perfectly overlapped with my long-sealed memories. It was me, Li Xingyun, and the ones I fiercely protected in my arms, never allowing anyone to harm. It was them, Yi Ruxu, Yi Ruming, those two old scars on their foreheads, those two faces, now stunningly beautiful, but with an unsettling familiarity. All questions, all confusion, all anomalies, All were instantly shattered by this faded photograph. A tremendous sense of absurdity, mixed with ultimate betrayal and furious indignation at having been played for a fool, instantly breached the last dam of my sanity. So this cage, this torment, this utterly preposterous game, all originated from that protection 20 years ago. WHY? No longer able to restrain myself, I let out a soul-shattering roar. Like a wounded beast, I burst out of the storage room, smashing the old photo album onto the floor. I held up the loose photograph, my fingers trembling violently from extreme rage and anguish. At the door stood two elegant yet cold silhouettes. I hadn't even realized when they had arrived. How long had they been there? My gaze locked dead onto G. Ramon, who was wearing a beige nightgown, a trace of sleepiness still lingering on her face. My roar sounded like a mournful wail. It was you? This photo? The orphanage? The two girls I protected were you? 20 years ago, I protected you. Why? Why are you doing this to me? My bellows echoed through the luxurious room. The revelation of their identities was like water dripping into boiling oil, instantly shattering the facade on Ji Ruming's face. Her look of innocent drowsiness vanished in a heartbeat. In her clear eyes, a fanatical obsession and twisted emotion suppressed for 20 years erupted like lava. It utterly incinerated the last shred of her disguise. On that exquisitely sculpted face, all gentleness was obliterated, leaving only a near-demonic, fanatical possessiveness and twisted infatuation. Why? She repeated my words, her pitch suddenly rising, laced with a shrill, piercing excitement and madness, her burning gaze nailed to me. That's right, Xingyun, it's us. We are the ones you protected. She took a step closer, that face I once thought angelic now twisted, mixing with a nearly pathological accusation. You ask why? You should have recognized us long ago. Do we mean nothing to you? Does that mean you don't love us? Every word struck my heart like a searing branding iron. 20 years? Recognize them? How is that even possible? The next second, she launched herself at me like an out-of-control cannonball, driven by a self-destructive resolve and indescribable fanaticism. MMPH. My questions were stifled in my throat. That was not a kiss. It was a gnawing, a marking. It was the bloody graffiti of a beast asserting sovereignty over its territory. Her lips crashed against mine without a trace of warmth, only cold, violent possession. Her teeth tore savagely at my lower lip. An intense pain mixed with the metallic taste of blood instantly filled my mouth. Her slender arms erupted with terrifying strength, clamping tightly around my neck and waist, pressing her body against mine without the slightest gap. Her tongue sought to pry open my teeth with destructive force. The entire act was filled with predatory savagery and a madness meant to declare ownership. I struggled violently, trying to push her away, but this insane embrace was like an iron clamp. Just as I tried to pry her arms loose, Ji Rushua moved. She didn't lunge like her sister. Instead, she silently cut in from my side, her movements swift as lightning. A cold hand instantly clamped onto my right wrist like iron pincers, with enough force to nearly crush the bone. Her other hand, possessing a ruthless strength that brooked no resistance, pinned my left shoulder blade with lethal precision. Her fingers were cold and hard, like torture instruments cast from steel. The terrifying force she applied instantly dismantled my ability to struggle, like a prisoner nailed to an execution rack. I could only watch in despair as Ji Ruming's manic kisses rained down like a storm, that bloody plunder declaring her twisted ownership. Ji Rushua's face was right beside mine, her breath brushing against my ear. Her voice was freezing, every word like a verdict tempered in ice shards. They poured into my ears, shattering all my hope and resistance. Do you understand now? The hand gripping my wrist tightened even further, the agonizing pain blanking out my mind. I could only stare hopelessly into her dark eyes, devoid of any human warmth. Then, don't you ever think of escaping. Her cold words struck like a final hammer blow. Immediately following was the icy sensation of metal against the skin of my wrists and ankles and the crisp click of a lock, the sound of my ultimate imprisonment. It turned out her approach wasn't just to subdue me, but to lock those custom-made alloy chains. Their identities were finally laid bare. Along with the explosion of twisted love and cold chains, I was dragged completely into an abyss of no return. The chaotic unveiling of their identities brought no relief, only a more desperate suffocation. The length of the chains restricted my movement to a limited radius within this massive cage. The inner sides of my wrists and ankles were rubbed raw and red by the cold alloy, leaving marks of humiliation. Their demeanor shifted as well. The mask of gentleness was torn to shreds, leaving only the twisted essence of dominators. Right beneath the room's only massive, yet mocking, observation window, they had meticulously arranged a grotesque memory corner. An enlarged group photo from the orphanage hung, suspended in an expensive black walnut frame. In the photo, I stood with the scrawny twin sisters in the corner of the back row. But what truly shattered my nerves was the glass display case positioned beneath the frame. The bottom of the case was lined with expensive dark blue velvet. Resting inside lay a metal whistle with severely worn edges. That was the object I had treasured most during my time at the orphanage. It was the cheapest kind of whistle sold at roadside stalls. Once, years ago, I used this whistle to divert the attention of the bullies who were tormenting them, giving them the chance to run away. Why had I lost it? I had long since forgotten it in the river of time. Now, it sat there, solemnly enshrined upon the velvet like a holy relic. Xingyun, do you remember this place? Every evening, we would walk helplessly by the river. Ji Rumeng would link her arm through mine, ignoring the chains around my ankles. Pointing to the corner in the photo where we stood, her voice was sweet yet laced with a manic infatuation. Back then, you were the only one willing to give us half a steamed bun and drive away those bad people for us. Only you. You were the only light in our darkness. Her gaze was as fanatical as a devotee gazing upon a deity. Ji Rushua, however, stood more often in silence before the glass display case, her fingertips tracing lightly over the cold glass surface, her gaze locked onto that worn-out whistle. Her voice was colder than the glass. Bugs? Filth? Fear? The night you appeared, they all vanished. She turned to look at me with a cold satisfaction of absolute control and a chilling interrogation. See? Look how well we've protected your belongings. Protected? Imprisoned? They equated the imprisonment of my body with the preservation of my relics. A creeping, horrifying sense of absurdity soaked into my marrow like ice water. Their gratitude had been twisted into eternal possession and control. They replayed the memory of being protected in the darkness over and over again, using it as fodder to frantically breed this luxurious hell made of gold and chains before my eyes. Despair spread through the depths of my heart like a dead sea. I began to refuse food, just as I refused this absurd script, just as I refused to breathe this nauseating air. For 3 consecutive days, aside from the bare minimum of water to sustain physiology, I let my body wither rapidly within the vast emptiness and despair. My once bright eyes completely lost their luster like dusty glass beads. The ebbing of my life did not seem to panic them. On the evening of the 4th day, the room was unusually devoid of the bright overhead lights. Countless candles were lit throughout the room, their flickering flames casting eerie, constantly shifting shadows upon the expensive wallpaper. The air was permeated with an overly sickly sweet fragrance, like incense used in sacrificial rites. Ji Rumeng wore a dark red silk gown, looking like a devout bride preparing to receive Holy Communion. Her cheeks were flushed with a strange redness from excitement as she held 2 glasses of deep red wine, translucent as gems, walking toward me step by step. Ji Rushua followed at her side, wearing a purely black custom-made formal dress, like a judge in the dark night. Her gaze was dimmer and gloomier than the candlelight. They stopped a step away from me. Ji Rumeng extended one of the glasses of deep red wine toward me. The candlelight refracted cold spots of light within the thick liquid, mixing with the twisted obsession and ecstasy in her eyes. Xingyun, her voice trembled. carrying a sacrificial sword of tenderness. Look at you, refusing to eat these past few days. Are you punishing us? Tears shimmered in her eyes, pitiful and lovely. We were wrong. We made you sad. She moved the wine glass closer, almost touching my lips. So, we want to give you a new life. Beside her, Jirushue took over the conversation, her voice cold, hard, and direct, without a trace of emotional fluctuation. A future that truly belongs to the three of us. A future where we are never apart. A home with no hurt, no betrayal. Just the three of us. Her gaze was like a solid iron hoop, locking onto my lifeless pupils. This is our only and final solution. It is also your only way out. Ji Ruming leaned forward slightly. Her long hair slipped down, covering half her face, revealing only that right eye which burned as if ignited. Her voice was as light as a falling feather, yet carried a devastating allure. Come. Drink it down. Xingyun. She tried to press the rim of the glass against my tightly closed lips. Drink it, forget all the pain. And when you wake up again, our blood will be connected, and we will be together forever. The sickly sweet smell of the wine mixed with the cloying fragrance, turning into a desperate fear that flooded into my nostrils. The color of that liquid was as red as coagulated blood. Resistance was futile. Jirushue's icy fingers had already clamped onto my jaw like iron pincers. Under the intense pain, my clenched teeth were forced to part crack. Be good, that's a good boy. Ji Ruming's smile looked exceptionally eerie in the flickering candlelight. The cold, crimson liquid poured down my throat like a venomous snake in an instant. Choking, suffocating, the liquid slid down my esophagus with an indescribable burn. My body struggled violently out of instinct, but Ji Rushue's hand was as immovable as welded steel. Ji Ruming gently patted my back, while emitting a satisfied, eerie chuckle. The world before my eyes warped rapidly amidst the flickering candlelight, blurring and losing its color. A ball of fire burned in my lower abdomen. My whole body felt unbearably hot and restless. The strength in my body vanished rapidly like a receding tide. The last thing clearly audible in my ears was Ji Ruming's whisper, sounding like a demonic incantation. Sleep now, Xingyun. When you wake up again, our bloodlines will be joined, together forever. Eternal darkness descended completely. My consciousness sank into a bottomless abyssal pool. Safe? What an ironic and despairing foreshadowing of the end. My consciousness was like a fish drowning in the deep sea, struggling to break the surface, only to be dragged back down time and again by an invisible weight. My senses painstakingly reorganized themselves. Hearing was the first to return. Pulse normal. Blood pressure is slightly low, but stable. Vital signs data upload complete. Reporting to President G. Cold, professional, unfamiliar female voices devoid of any emotion conversed vaguely in the distance. My eyelids felt as heavy as if crushed by a 1,000-pound boulder. Light irritated my retinas, a hazy expanse of white. My throat felt as dry as if sandpaper had rubbed it raw, and the smell of disinfectant filled my nose. It mixed with a lingering trace of familiar sweet fragrance belonging to Ji Ruming, and another strange scent that had been deliberately masked, slightly musky and metallic. The smell of a physiological laboratory. Using every ounce of strength, I forced my eyes open a slit. My vision was blurred. A white ceiling, bright and cold medical-grade overhead lights. This wasn't that familiar luxury prison cell. Awake! A cold female voice pierced my eardrums like an ice pick. I stiffly rolled my eyes. Jirushue was sitting on a chair beside the bed. She held a tablet in her hand. The eerie blue light from the screen reflected on her expressionless face, making her look even colder. She watched my eyes open, as if confirming the functional recovery of an object. My consciousness cleared completely. The final terror before I passed out flooded my mind. That glass of crimson wine. Their objective. I tried to raise my hand in panic, but my body felt heavy and weak, as if filled with molten lead. A deeper fear seized my heart. Under the influence of that drug, the humiliation and nausea of being subjected to their forced union overwhelmed me. I struggled violently, Don't move. Ji Rushue's voice carried a commanding chill. She didn't physically stop me, but simply stated the facts coldly. You need to remain in bed for observation for 24 hours. What did you do? My voice was hoarse and broken, filled with extreme terror and hatred. That wine. You. Just as I was questioning them uncontrollably, another voice, filled with cheerful satisfaction, rang out. Xingyun. Ji Ruming's voice held a sweet sob and immense joy. She emerged from behind a screen on the other side of the room. She was also wearing a loose white robe similar to a hospital gown, but draped over it was a soft, pale pink knitted cardigan. Her long hair was loosely pinned up, and her face glowed with a strange luster. She didn't go near Ji Rushue, but walked directly to my bedside, as if she couldn't see the sheer horror, rage, and fear in my eyes. She leaned forward slightly, her cheeks flushed with excitement, her eyes flickering with a nearly innocent, ecstatic light, staring at me unblinkingly, her voice trembling with excitement. Xingyun, I have the absolute best news to tell you. Her hands were clasped together, resting gently on her flat lower abdomen, her movements filled with a sense of sacred ritual. Can you feel it? Her gaze was obsessive and fanatical, as if whispering to a sleeping infant. It's so magical. A little life is already beating in here. It's yours. Big sister has one too. Her words detonated like a hydrogen bomb in my brain, instantly shattering my soul. She isn't being clear enough. Ji Rushue's voice rang out flatly from the side, without a single ripple of emotion, like a professional spokesperson. She elegantly placed the tablet on her lap and leaned forward slightly. Her voice was clear, articulating every word, as she threw the bloody truth right in my face. Xingyun, both of us have successfully had sex with you. She paused briefly, as if savoring the look of devastation on my face, before continuing her announcement. So, congratulations. You're going to be a father. Twins. Us. Both of them. Pregnant. Every word struck like a poison-dipped bullet, shredding my soul to pieces. Coercion. Drugs. Violation. Pregnancy. They had used the most extreme, most shameless method imaginable. They had shackled my bloodline with chains that could never be removed. Animals. A hoarse roar tore from my throat. Immense humiliation and monstrous hatred made my body tremble violently. I wanted nothing more than to lunge at this pair of devils before me. But my physical weakness and Ji Rushue's cold, warning gaze acted like iron chains, instantly nailing me back to the spot. Ji Rushue slowly stood up. She walked to the bedside, looming over me from her vantage point. Her shadow fell like a mountain, devouring every last scrap of light. Her voice was no longer cold. Instead, it carried a heavy, brutally pragmatic, and indisputable sense of oppression. Now, here is the reality of the situation. She extended one slender, pale finger. You have two choices. First, you admit that in a drunken stupor, you committed grave misconduct against my sister and me. Serious illegal acts with irrefutable evidence of a crime. We have ample biological samples. The video footage shows you initiating intimacy before passing out. The witnesses are the doctors and nurses here. Furthermore, we have a psychiatric evaluation from an authoritative institution stating that your long-term use of psychoactive stimulants has led to irritability and intermittent loss of control. This report will ensure you have zero chance in court. You will be prosecuted and convicted for rape and mental instability. You will be ruined, becoming a laughingstock and a pariah to the entire society. The corner of her cold lips curled upward in an extremely rare motion, a cruel and absolute decree. You will have nothing. You will never rise again. As for the two developing fetuses, in accordance with our contingency plan for the G family succession, they will be immediately aborted and disposed of. The words aborted and disposed of struck like an ice pick, shattering my last remaining bone. A chilling cold rushed from the base of my spine, straight to the crown of my head. Second, Ji Rushue's voice did not shift in temperature in the slightest as she extended a second finger. It was as if she were reading aloud the terms of a pre-written corporate merger. You, Li Xingyun, will voluntarily assume the responsibilities of a man. You will enter into a marriage with me and become a nominal member of the G family. You will bear no legal obligation regarding Ms. Ji Ruming's assets or personal life. However, you will be permitted, under the guise of a close friend or any other reasonable title, to assume the moral responsibility of raising the child born out of wedlock. In exchange, you may keep your meager but cherished assets and retain your pathetic little reputation. Furthermore, as the biological father of our children, you will enjoy the highest level of security and material support the G family can provide. We will issue a secondary psychiatric report certifying that your previous instability was due to high-intensity work and personal setbacks, and that you have since fully recovered. She leaned in closer. On that peerlessly beautiful face, which looked like a mask carved from ice, there was no flicker of human emotion, only naked control and the faintest trace of mockery. Choose option 1, and you will end up like a rotting, maggot-infested stray dog, crushed and spat upon. Your children will never even get the chance to glimpse this world. Choose option 2. Her cold breath brushed against my face. You can be the father to the children, and we will live happily together. She slowly straightened up and delivered her final summary. Now, give me your choice. Her cold gaze fixed on my eyes like two steel awls. Fear. Overwhelming fear crushed all my anger and humiliation. Ji Rushue's words were like a precisely drawn blueprint of hell, laying out the abyss of every option with terrifying clarity before my eyes. She wasn't forcing me to choose. She was showing me the only path to survival she had already calculated. My gaze cast desperately toward Ji Rumung, whose hand still rested on her lower abdomen. Then it fell back upon Ji Rushue's cold, scrutinizing stare. Two fetuses, two innocent lives destined for a twisted existence. They began with me, and now they had become the most effective tool to bind me. Responsibility? What a twisted, heavy weight to bear. Did I hate them? I didn't know. Or perhaps I simply didn't dare. I didn't even dare to hate them. How ridiculous. But did I hate those two embryos that shouldn't exist? Flowing within those twisted embryos was my own blood I could not erase. Was I afraid of losing my reputation and having nothing? Yes, terrified to the very marrow of my bones. Was I afraid I couldn't bear the consequences of the abortion? A moral chain heavy enough to crush the soul. My stomach spasmed violently, nausea surging up. Bursts of blackness clouded my vision. Immense pain and despair nearly tore me apart on the spot. I looked at them, one with eyes full of fanatical obsession, immersed in fantasies of the future. One with eyes cold as knives, holding the power over life and death. My throat felt blocked by molten lead. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My body trembled like a fallen leaf in the wind. My consciousness struggled, bobbing in a tide of darkness. Countless voices screamed wildly in my brain. In the end, only two heavy, blood-scented words remained: responsibility. Despair, like freezing seawater, completely drowned my nose and mouth. I closed my eyes. Using every bit of remaining strength, I squeezed out one word. Yes, this single word betrayed my past, my dignity, my soul, and all the freedom of the rest of my life, in exchange for the survival of two bloodlines and the twisted, despairing decency of being a prisoner. Ji Rushue's face still held no expression, but a flash of satisfaction swept through those cold, deep eyes. Ji Rumung let out a short, satisfied cry, like a kitten. Stroking her lower abdomen gently again, she gazed at me obsessively, as if I had just given her the greatest promise in the world. 3 months later, the Pacific Ocean, a private island. Beneath my feet was pure white sand, soft as flour and professionally treated. I was wearing a white suit worth $1 million, custom-made by a top designer. The fabric was crisp, the details flawless. But inside the clothes, my body was as stiff as a piece of old wood. The muscles on my face felt dead, even though they had been carefully groomed by a professional makeup artist. The lingering, dead silence deep in my eyes was still clearly visible. Ahead was an aisle paved with a long, pure white carpet. At the end stood a white priest in robes, smiling genially. The background was the boundless sea, the sky and ocean merging into one, symbolizing vast freedom. Yet, I stood in the most heavily guarded wedding venue in the world. There were fewer than 20 guests, with sharp eyes and steady steps, each strictly screened by the G clan. The wedding march began to play, magnificent and solemn. At the ends of the aisles on both sides, they appeared simultaneously. Both wore extremely intricate and magnificent vintage-style wedding gowns with long trains, handmade from top-tier lace. The huge skirts were like pure white clouds, enveloping their figures. Their faces wore smiles of ultimate happiness and sweetness. Faint blushes, fluid glances, and their gaze fell upon only one person, me. They walked very slowly, as if every step was on clouds, immersed in the immense joy of a dream come true. Occasionally, she would look up at me, the obsession and possessiveness in her eyes so thick it could not be dissolved. They finally came to a stop beside me at the same time. Ji Rushua stood on my right. Her arm naturally slipped through the crook of my arm, her hand gripping with unquestionable strength. Her gaze fell on my stiff, numb profile, and the corners of her mouth turned up slightly. The arc was subtle but clear, a curve declaring victory. Ji Rumung stood on my left. Her movements were softer and more seductive. She intimately held my left arm with both hands, leaning her entire upper body against me. The fluffy skirt of her wedding dress even crowded into the space where I stood. I could smell the rich, expensive scent of roses on her. She tilted her head back, her eyes locking onto me obsessively, and whispered softly, "Xingyun is so good. Now it's just us." The priest's voice rang out. "Ms. Ji Rushua, do you take Mr. Li Xingyun to be your husband, regardless of?" "Ido." Ji Rushua's voice rang out clearly, cold, decisive, without the slightest hesitation or wavering, interrupting the priest. Her gaze remained cold, staring straight ahead, as if completing a signed and sealed equity transfer contract. The priest paused slightly, then continued. "Mr. Li Xingyun, do you take Ms. Ji Rushua to be your wife, regardless of?" A brief, suffocating silence. On the entire beach, there was only the rhythmic sound of waves washing ashore. Everyone's eyes were focused on me. Ji Rumung unconsciously tightened her grip on my arm, her fingernails slightly digging into my flesh through the fabric. Her gaze was full of urgent urging and a hint of veiled threat. Ji Rushua's cold arm brought a heavier sense of oppression. My throat felt stuffed with burning charcoal. My brain roared. I opened my mouth, feeling the voice come from the distant depths of hell. "I do." The voice was hoarse, broken, and weak. A flush of immense joy instantly flooded Ji Ruming's cheeks. The priest began to continue with her part. When asked, Ji Ruming's answer was filled with sweet jubilation. "I do. I really do." Her voice was so sweet it could drip honey. "Now, let the newlyweds exchange rings." 2 rings lay side by side on the pillow. The massive pear-shaped main diamond was dazzling in the sunlight, priceless, enough to blind the eyes of any ordinary person. Ji Rushua reached out expressionlessly, and a ring was placed on the ring finger of her left hand. Then, she picked up the other ring from the pillow, just as her icy fingertips were about to touch the skin of my left ring finger. "Wait!" Ji Rumung suddenly spoke, her voice holding a trace of petulance, ruining the flow of the ceremony. Everyone's gaze instantly turned to her, including the icy-faced Ji Rushua. Ji Rumung still wore that impeccable, happy smile. She turned to me. "Xingyun's hand should be ringed by Rumung first today." She didn't wait for the priest to react, nor did she care about Ji Rushua's cold stare. She reached out her pale, slender fingers, moving incredibly naturally over the ring pillow, precisely picking up the thorn ring that Ji Rushua was supposed to hand to me. She took my left hand, her movements gentle but with a strength that allowed no escape, forcibly bending my ring finger into place. The cold, hard metal band, carrying a blinding light, was pushed forcefully to the base of my finger. The size was exactly right. The base of my finger was strangled so tight the bone hurt. Then, satisfied and beaming with a smile, she handed that huge pear-shaped diamond ring to Ji Rushua, as if sharing an interesting toy. "Here, sis, it's your turn to put on Xingyun." Ji Rushua just coldly swept a glance at the thorn ring on my left ring finger, the one she had handpicked but was snatched and put on by Ji Roman, her eyes showing no fluctuation. Without a word, she took the pear-shaped diamond ring from Ji Roman. Her movements were crisp and clean. Pinching my ring finger, she almost forcibly pushed it onto the finger joint right next to the thorn ring. Two cold, luxurious, suffocatingly heavy rings, like two inescapable shackles, firmly locked onto my left hand. The priest stiffly announced, "I pronounce you husband and wife." No applause, a blessing. No blessings. The ceremony ended hastily. Late at night, the oversized open-air viewing platform on the top floor of the villa. The huge open-air pool refracted the cold moonlight. The sea breeze was stronger than during the day, carrying a salty, briny scent. They had changed out of their cumbersome gowns. Ji Rumung wore a thin, soft white silk nightdress with spaghetti straps adorned with fine lace. A cashmere cardigan of the same color draped loosely over it. Ji Rushua wore a dark gray silk robe with cold, hard lines. They stood to the left and right in front of the glass railing at the platform's edge, gazing at the endless, surging sea in the darkness. Moonlight fell on their beautiful profiles, casting long shadows. I was still wearing that glaring white tuxedo, like a huge, inescapable mark of shame. The two rings set with cold diamonds on my hand were so heavy they almost dragged my finger off. Ji Rumung turned her head, moonlight spilling onto the tips of her hair and her neck, like a holy halo. She walked briskly to me and stood on tiptoe. A slightly cool kiss, carrying a scent of fresh sweet fruit, landed on my cheek. A kiss purely expressing possession and satisfaction. She pulled up my left hand. The cold rings grated against each other. Her fingers caressed the winding patterns of the thorn ring. Her eyes so gentle they seemed about to drip water, murmuring softly, like chanting the most devout vow. "Xingyan, look." Her slightly cool fingertips traced along the ring, pressing lightly on the inside of my cold wrist, trying to feel the pulse there. What a beautiful night. What a deep sea. From that cold, dark orphanage to today, there's no one else. Only us. Only the three of us left. Her voice was dreamlike and ethereal. We will be together forever and ever, right? Her gaze was full of expectation, waiting for an affirmative response, a willing submission. I looked at the reflection of myself in the dead stillness of her pupils. My throat felt blocked by a block of lead, unable to make any sound. Just then, Ji Rushua's cold voice rang out from the other side of the terrace, interrupting her sister's reverie. "Rumung, Xingyun, come here. The wind is picking up. We need a rest." Her command was precise and clear. The door slid shut silently. The huge floor-to-ceiling glass door separated the inside and outside into two worlds. Only the three of us. What a luxurious cage. What eternal, unbreakable chains.